Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level. Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase, the podcast that helps you succeed in your business life and career. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group, and with me as always is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing great. How about you, Eric?
Doing fantastic. As we record this, we have just wrapped up Mother's Day, and to all of the mothers out there, we hope you had a fantastic day and know we appreciate you.
Oh, absolutely. And I just had a very special Mother's Day weekend. My wife's niece got married on Saturday, and it's the first family wedding on her side of the family since my son got married 7 years ago. So talk about mothers and so on and so forth. It was just a very special day for her family and a special weekend. So again, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. It was a beautiful day here yesterday, and you all deserve it.
Fantastic. So today we've got a special guest, Dr. Stephen Greene. Stephen, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you, Eric and Chip. And I would be remiss if I didn't also say happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. What about me? I am an educator, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a podcaster, I am an author, and I am a mentor. I enjoy working with people to help them to advance themselves either in a business world or in a personal development sense. And it all tends to come together because I think to me, everything's connected. You can't really have one without the other, and several other aspects as well. So I've spent 34 years, if you can believe that, in the education and training vertical. Worked with, I lost count, I'm going to say 25,000 people maybe over all that time. Worn a couple different hats here and there in terms of job titles, but I've been on my own, running my own concern, which is called Make the Grade, since 1996, last century.
Seems,
Identify with that.
it seems odd that we can say that,
Yeah, last century. I know it's makes me feel sort of old, but just a number.
That's it. Seeing as we're a quarter of the way through this one.
Yeah, we
Right.
are. Yeah, it's true. I don't. Yeah, that's even more sobering. But anyway, so I'm here. I am ready to talk and share some info and hopefully help some people get some good ideas. And let it begin.
So let's start with Make the Grade. What is your focus with that?
It is really two things that overlap. One is giving people tangible steps, creating process of systems that will lead them to desired results. So I help them establish that. Sometimes it's three or four steps, sometimes it's one or two, sometimes it's more protracted. The other thing is accountability and mentoring, and I guess the word most people would think of is coaching. So um, the flagship product and offering of Make the Grade is something I call the triangle of success. And in my mind, and this is really based more on experience, this evolved organically. In order to be successful in business, and success isn't always about the bottom line, but it's certainly one of the measuring sticks, I think you need three things. You need a viable product or service that you can sell to your ideal clients. Number two is you need a system and a process to sell it with some consistency. And then the third thing you need is mentoring as an accelerant. Eventually, people probably will figure it out on their own or just quit. or get pushed out because they can't sell enough. But I think the combination of those three synergistically work together to just bring people to a point of independence and self-reliance.
Fantastic. Now, you also do a lot of work training people how to use information products to promote
Yes,
themselves. Tell
that
us a
is
little
also
bit about that.
under the sort of vertex of the triangle of services and business. Sometimes people don't have a business. They have one and they don't really know how to communicate it. So some people are naturally good on a podcast or on a video or on a reel or whatever. Some aren't. So about 20 years ago, I realized, you know what? There's a value to creating basically a mouthpiece for yourself. And I felt the easiest one was either a book, an ebook, or some sort of written document. This is really before video, another way to date myself, was really quite as accessible as it is now. It existed, but it's not like everybody's walking around with a video camera, aka a phone. So I have spent one of the things I do within sort of the mentoring piece is show people, okay, let's create an informational, educational product which will educate your prospects, educate your population about what you do, why they need it, what problem it solves, and why you are the preferred solution. Because obviously, in a competition based world, there's other places people could probably get the same solution. But we assume people want to go to the best and the most reputable and the most experienced. And that's what we have to teach people about. So the information product isn't just to say, hey, this is a widget and this is what it does. It's much, much more broad than that. And it's also, if you want to really kind of get down to it more granularly, it's targeted to who you believe your ideal market is. So, for example, if I'm selling to a bunch of mothers in a certain demographic, in a certain age bracket, in a certain population, the voice of what we're going to say and the presentation is going to be different than I'm selling to a bunch of experienced geniuses like we might have in this little cohort here. So, but that it just makes sense. But it's things that people don't think about until sometimes it's too late. And especially if you have a marketing budget and you invest a lot of it, and then you don't get a whole lot of result. So this is one of these kind of measure twice, cut once sort of things. So, but it works.
So I think a key to those information products is really helping your clients figure out what their value proposition is and how to communicate that to their
Mhm.
desired audience.
Absolutely true. Yeah. Um, think about any situation. If you need something, you need a solution to a problem, whether it's buying something or a physical or a service, you need to know what is this going to do for me? Now, in my world, a lot of my clients, a lot of my entrepreneur clients are selling services. It's not something tangible. It's not like a pen where there's sort of an obvious value. So you need to be able to clearly say, this is what I do, and this is why it's going to help you in your particular case. Now, the trouble is, Eric and all, is that it's a moving target because everybody's circumstance is a little bit different, right? What you're going to need is different what Chip needs, which is different what Bill needs, or different Mary needs. So we kind of start sort of broad and then bring it in and focus it a lot more specifically as the education and the person's understanding of it increases.
Nice. And of course, you mentioned communicating to your desired client. And
Mhm.
obviously, like you mentioned, mothers, certainly you would communicate differently with a B2C product, something targeted towards mothers, than you would say a B2C product targeted at tech people
Yeah.
or a B2B
Hmm.
service that's targeting executives. So how do you help them identify who they're trying to reach so that they can communicate properly?
Specifically, well, there's a number of ways. The most obvious one is to see who are they already selling to? Who are they already who's already on their client role? Now, if the answer is no one, or they're just starting, then the idea would be let's examine. Well, that's step one. If that doesn't give us data, then step two is what is the solution you're providing? It's classic. That is not something I invented or even pretend to invent it. It's what's your solution? And we say, well, who is going to benefit from this? Okay. Then we got to say, all right, now that we know who that is, how do they want that communicated to them? Do they want it on social media? Do they want it by video? Do they want it through a book? Do they want it through a webinar? Because now, present day, there's a lot of different ways that you can convey this information, right? Now, it's also going to depend on your credibility. Anybody could do a webinar and be very persuasive, or somebody could do a webinar and lose their entire audience if their speaking skills aren't strong or their elocution skills are weak or whatever. So it's a combination. Everything's always multiple levels. It's always a combination of is your message clear? Is the way who you're saying it to going to be reached by your messaging? And I think the third phase thing is, and this is I think where having a background in the education world helps is how much can somebody take in at a time? Okay. So if I try to explain to you, all right, I got this widget here and it does, this is what's going to help you. This is great. And after 15 minutes, if I stop talking, they probably shut down after about 30 seconds. Right.
Right.
So one of the things I teach people is, and it's a sales technique as well. It's again, is just checking for understanding. So I say, hey, Eric, are you looking for a solution to your podcast recording problem that you might have? Sure. Okay. Let me ask you this. Are you looking for something that is under $200 or over $200? Oh, I want to save money under 200. Great. Just want to make sure. Now I know information. Now I know I'm not going to even attempt to show him the, Telefunken 47FV. I'm going to stick with the little cheap Radio Shack product or something. Not to diss Radio Shack. But see, it's all
We're
about
dating ourselves again with the Radio Shack reference,
yeah,
but
well, and the Telefunken F47 reference.
It was my first computer, a TRS-80.
yeah.
There you go. See, but
Business.
but my point is, as you learn, see, the reason you ask questions and pause is because now you're learning about your prospect, who hopefully will soon be a client, right? Now, if I just go this, there's no opportunity to get feedback.
Right.
Now, to me, if you think about my triangle, this falls under the purview of feedback. This falls under the purview of mentoring, because this is not something most people figure out on their own because they just don't think about it. They figure the more information I give and the quicker I give it and the more persuasive I am when I give it, the more likely somebody is to engage and to purchase. But they're really missing an opportunity, not just to learn information so you can tailor your presentation, but also to build some level of relationship and some kind of simpatico. I think we'll all agree, and those of you out there in podcast land, you'd rather buy something from somebody you like and trust, right? No like trust. That's out there. And how are you going to develop that if it's a complete cold situation? You got to let them get to know you. You got to let them learn to trust you. You got to let them start to like you. And you don't do that by just spewing all kinds of information on them really, really rapidly, or as they used to say, fire hose on them. So this is one of the techniques of many that I teach to my community, to my clients, and I guess in this case, the audience here as well.
Right. And what you're talking about is really much more of a consultative method of selling where
Yeah.
you're exploring what the problem is that the customer is facing. And
Hmm.
that's very important. And we've talked about this with sales over and over again. Um, but I think the best story about it is a speech that the CEO of Black and Decker gave his salespeople. And I've said this to our listeners before, where he told them, our customers don't want drills. Our customers want holes. We're
Oh,
just providing them the best way to get that.
mhm. Yeah, it's just true. And it's a simple lesson that's easy to understand, but sometimes in the heat of the moment, sometimes people forget, and they kind of revert to old habits or they get excited. But no, you're absolutely right. I've heard it's a good story. I like that story. Um, but that's always the thing. The most powerful things are usually the simplest messages, right? Um, but as you call it, a consultative type of sales is all about learning about what your prospect slash client wants. Why would they buy something they don't need or want? Well, sometimes people do, but generally that's not the path. So if you get back to the idea of educational materials, we need to sort of pre-think this, right? We need to say, gee, if I'm going to create, let's say, a 6-page ebook to describe what I do or what my client does, we need to think, gee, what are the questions this person's going to ask? Because if they're reading the ebook, I don't have a chance to have that dialogue and to get that feedback. So this is where experience comes in. This is where data collection can be helpful. So people focus on the bottom line so much that they miss the ability to refine what they're doing by collecting data along the way, right? So if I pitch 50 people on something and 40 say no for the same reason, it's probably an objection that I want to tackle preemptively. So this is again, this is not really rocket science on the scale of what you can do in sales, but it's some things, especially with young, or I don't mean necessarily young in terms of age, inexperienced entrepreneurs just don't think about because they're so focused on their product typically and making sales because they need to just survive in terms of revenue. So this is where somebody like myself and yourself come in because we can take a step back, we can analyze the situation, we can provide feedback and advice from more of a kind of 30,000-foot view, and also we've just got way more experience. um, I mean, my background's in education and psychology. I'm not a medical doctor. My doctor's in education psychology, so I learned a lot about motivational things and the power of language and body language and stuff. And that's helpful. But in the end, it's about trying to help somebody to feel good about the decision that they're going to make, right? And that's really, at least philosophically, how I approach sales personally and how I try to teach the people that I work with.
And that's a very good point. You talk about making them feel good about the decision. Most people, studies have shown, actually buy emotionally, and then they'll
Mhm.
use facts and figures to
There you
justify
go.
the decision they made emotionally. So, yes, you do need to have that connection with a potential client and make them feel good about what they're about to do.
Hmm. Yeah, that's one of the secrets. But it's if it was that easy, everybody'd be selling, at record pace every day. What makes it challenging is number one, you're dealing with a disparate population, right? Not everybody is the
Right.
same. So you can't necessarily have the same message over and over and over and over if you're willing to take the time to customize it. And the second challenge is just being consistent with what you do as well, right? So this is why information products can be very powerful because it's giving the exact same information over and over and over and over, and you don't necessarily have to repeat it yourself. Because if just you get a day you're tired, oh, I'm going to leave this out, or you're just stressed, I'm going to leave that out, or whatever. So, it's all tools. It's all a tool to get to an end point. And that's like I said, I'm kind of blending my education background with my sales background, with my psychology background, with my experience. And this is how I know it works just on my own caseload, but I know it works because I've seen people that don't have any sales ability. They don't even want to sell. They're scared of selling. To them, it's very intimidating. Sell 6-figure months because their system is what's working. And it's establishing the system. That's the second part of that triangle that can be really powerful as well. But part of that system is the information and how it's being conveyed. So they're all one big kind of confusing thing sometimes, but it all comes together and fits in a very orderly way when it's set up properly.
Nice. And by putting together the informational product, you're also helping clients actually self select because,
Yes.
you do want to be pitching to qualified potential clients. This helps
Yeah.
them qualify themselves if they've looked at the informational product and said, oh, yes, this is something that would help me. I'm interested. That's, one barrier down.
It's also creating the information product clarifies the message because typically it's a back and forth. You write a first draft, you edit, you field test it maybe a little bit. Second, you may not have a finished version until your fourth or fifth iteration, right? Well, this helps the presenter, in this case, the person trying to sell, to become better and better and better and more natural with their presentation. Now, there's one piece that's missing a little bit, which is just presentation, right? So if I said, Eric and Chip, I got this great widget I want to sell you. It works really well. It's unbelievably great. It's only $6. How many do you want? You're like,
Yeah.
right? So there is an element of passion, right? Hey, this thing, it's unbelievable. I didn't think it was going to work for me at all. And then I tried it. I was like, this is great. How much is it? Oh my God. I thought it was gonna be $100, only $6. What a deal. So, the message is the message. The deliverance of it is also important. And you can do that type of delivery when number one, you know what you're going to say, you're comfortable saying it, and you really believe in what you're doing. And again, it's hard to sometimes convey all this in a short amount of time. But I think if you're listening or you're watching this, you can see how the pieces start to come together. And that's essentially what I do. Is kind of bring all these pieces into alignment and help people bring it out to the world, I guess. So the other thing is there's a sense of satisfaction. I've helped you've written some books, haven't you, Eric?
Yes, I've got two books out there and I've got a third one coming later this year.
There you go. Beautiful. I mean, it's a satisfying thing. Books are a lot of work. They always seem harder to do than you thought. But
Yes.
when they come out, it's very, very rewarding, right? So you're proud of it. You want, hey, here's my book. Here's my, what do you think? Take one, or let me autograph one for you, whatever. So by helping people create these products, it gives them a sense of pride in it. And it also helps you in your authority, right? So
Yes.
you say, hey, look, I just wrote this book about this topic. People, oh my God, if he wrote a book, he must be a genius. He must really know his stuff. How could you write a book if he wasn't really accomplished? No, you're not saying as well, it's only 6 pages and half of them are pictures, but still, not your book, or I mean,
No,
some of
no.
the yeah, some of the ones out there. But this it's all like I say, it keeps wraps up in the same ball of wax. Um, and that's all part of the trust, and that's all part of the knowing and liking, is when you can present all this, kind of all together with the problems, the solution to the problem at the right price point with something that people need to your ideal client. And I say these same words, these same phrases all day, over and over and over, because that's all it really is. From a basic sales standpoint, in my opinion, there's more to it in terms of metrics and longer term stages of sales where you have 8 or 10 visits. But when you got a $200, $300 product, you ought to be able to at least tell somebody all about it in one conversation. That's your psychology. That's your process.
Yeah, I mean, Eric and I, obviously, both of us, and you too, have been through the networking circuit for 2 centuries now, as we talked
Yeah,
about.
yeah, probably between
And
the two of us, half a millennium.
yeah,
But anyway.
yeah, yeah. I mean, what you have is all the experience as far as everything that's been done for sales and everything throughout that period of time. But it really gets back to basic human nature. You know,
Hmm.
when I teach networking, I talk about the networking misconception, which is I join a chamber, or I join this, or I join that.
Yeah.
Therefore, I get. When people only buy stuff because they need it or they want it. So
Hmm.
needs are one thing, impulse is the other thing. And obviously, impulse, the different methods that you hit people that way is just endless as far as that goes. But what you need to do out there is just, as you said, it's the value proposition. And if you can get something to spark somebody's interest to ask you a question so they're ready to listen to you, because
Hmm.
Eric and I talk about networking badges instead of being names is what's in it for me. That's what this thing is all about, and helping people who have great ideas and so on and so forth are so into that. Okay, time out. When you're looking for something, what's the first thing you want to know about the person you're dealing with?
That's right.
Relationship. So,
There's one other kind of aspect to this, which we may or may not want to explore at all, which is sustainability, right? If I have something I sell once, so Eric needs whatever, I sell it to him. Now what? I don't have an upgrade. I don't have an accessorization. I don't have an add-on. Maybe in a year I have a second edition. So, you have to have a process that's sustainable for you to make whatever number of sales you need in a week or a day or a quarter to sustain yourself in business. So, again, I've seen a lot of people, once they learn how to do this and they're consistent, do very, very well. I've also seen people that, even though you teach them, they won't stick with it. They don't stick with the script. And I don't mean literally reading a script. I mean the process. And it doesn't work. And then they, oh, why didn't this work? I don't understand. Well, it is what it is.
Yeah,
But
that's
no, there is a value to experience. The more you do something, clearly the better you get at it. But most people in the entrepreneurial space don't have 7 years to get good at something. Their clock's ticking a lot quicker than that.
right. You don't have all the time in the world, but you do have to persevere, and that's very important for entrepreneurs. You
Yes.
know, you it's a tightrope. It's a very difficult balancing act between the ability to pivot and knowing when you shouldn't pivot and persevere with what you're doing.
Hmm.
And again, that comes with experience, which is why there's a coaching industry with folks with experience to give that experience to first-time entrepreneurs and new business owners.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you get the right coach, it can be very powerful. Um, and I think part of that is the coach's role is to bring out the best in their prospect, in their
Yes.
proteges. That's the key. I've seen coaches, I don't want to go this direction for long, but who really, they take people in and they don't, they're not really having their best interests at heart sometimes. But that's really the key. If you're looking for a coach, if somebody's listening to this, you know, don't do it flippantly. Really make sure it's the right choice and the right fit for you.
Yeah, that's very important. Not every coach is right for every client.
Yeah.
And because of what you're doing, there needs to be a high level of trust. So before you jump into hiring a coach, you need to make sure that that connection is there and that trust exists.
Yeah.
Now,
Absolutely.
we are coming up on the end of our time. So before we wrap up, if our listeners want to get more information on what you do or hire you, how can they get the info?
I have a giveaway, which I think people will find valuable. The website is just simple. It's Get Greene, which is my last name, but with an E on the end. So GETGREENE.net. And what I'm going to give you is this. It is about a 55-minute video, which will show you 7 steps how to create your own information product. Giving it away is the exact process I use, and I charge people pretty handsomely to do it if I do it with them or for them. But I will give that away. It's a video they can watch at their leisure or rewatch. So it's getgreen.net. That's the way to get my capture page. I can give you my email and that sort of thing if you want to put it with the show notes as well.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. So, yeah, so remember to get more information, it's getgreene, GREENE.net.
That's
So,
it.
Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for this week?
Well, I love what you started with the triangle of success. Ensuring success means having a viable product, automated system, and a mentor or a team. And basically, when you talk about yourself, you talk about leading people through the challenging journey of transitioning to the virtual world. In other words, there's so many different ways to do this. And with the approach that you have, I highly recommend people go to that website and check out the video because there's a whole lot to learn there. So great having you on.
Yeah, appreciate it. This was fun. Went
Uh,
fast. Sure, it was 30 minutes.
yes, it was actually. It does tend to go quickly when we have the conversations.
When
Yeah,
you have the brain, the collective brain power that the three of us have.
yeah, I think for me, the big takeaway is making sure you're communicating in the right way to the right people. You have to understand who your client is and how they need to communicate to get to yes. And that's something, it's simple, but it's not easy. And
Yeah.
that's something that most business people really need to remember, particularly if they don't have a lot of sales experience, is that it's all about the emotion of the potential client. It's what's in it for them. And we've said that quite often on this podcast.
Mhm.
So thanks for being with us, Stephen. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.